hold on. We're gonna try that one more time. We're gonna make Great Park feel like we're either at Honda Center or down at Pechanga Arena right now, okay? So let's go ahead and get this started one more time. Welcome Orange Alliance members and Gulls Elite members to the inaugural Ducks Migration! That's what I'm talking about. My name is DJ JoJo. We're gonna go ahead and get this started. Keep that round of applause going, and please welcome to the stage Club President of your Anaheim Ducks, Mr. Aaron Teets.
I always find it so hard to follow JoJo's intros. I feel like I'm letting it down a little. Am I okay here? Getting a little taller. Oh, right. That's nice. No, thank you. It's great to have our what we're calling the migration here, and I really wanted to give a heartfelt thanks to all of our Gulls Elite members who made it. Where are our Gulls Elite? Traveling all the way up from the 5 freeway, and then certainly our Orange Alliance members here that have been with us all year long. Thank you so much. You know, probably the two most important resources that a family has are its time and its money. And it's not lost on anybody in our organization how much you spend of both of those things with us. And so I just want to say from the bottom of our heart, and certainly representing our ownership and all of our executive leadership, thank you so much. We're not able to do what we're doing every night and every day if it wasn't for the people that I'm looking out here about. So to all of you, thank you so much for all you've done all year long. We certainly recognize, we look at the standings, nobody's sugarcoating anything. It's not easy to see the Ducks at the bottom of those standings through the course of the year. But as we'll talk about today, everything's a process, and we'll get things going. But if it wasn't for the dedication of the people that I'm looking at today, we wouldn't be where we are. So thank you so much. I will, thank you. I will tell you, in our meetings that we have, our executive committee meetings, all the way down to all our marketing meetings and such, we talk incessantly about guest experience. And we want to make sure, and our goal here, a stated goal and an objective that we have with our organization is to be the #1 guest experience in the NHL. And we can't do that without you. We know that the team is a big part of that, but we also know how important that feedback is that we receive from you. So we'll talk a little bit more about feedback. We'll talk about some things about guest experience down the way. But it is nice at certain points of the season like this. It kind of gives us an opportunity to reflect a little bit on some pivotal and key moments in our season, like the trade deadline. And what's coming up in front of us, the NHL entry draft and free agency right behind that. So there's no better opportunity for us to get this group together and get folks like Pat Verbeek and Scott Niedermayer who are steering our ship for us. I'd like to, get them here and let's talk hockey today. Let's figure out exactly where we are, and let's hear about that vision, let's hear about that strategy, and let's reflect on some of the things. It was a busy day yesterday, trade deadline. We'll ask Pat about that, tell us how things went down, but also let's continue to keep in and look at what that long-term vision and strategy is for our club. As you all know, we're already having an eye on the future. Next year is going to be an exciting year for all Gulls Elite and Orange Alliance members. With our Duck side, we're excited about setting up for our 30th anniversary season. It's going to be we can cheer for that. I'm in. I think this will be even an anniversary season like that is something that's really important for both Gulls and Ducks fan bases to key in on, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But be ready for some of these things that our marketing group is planning for you. I know we're going to have a concept that you'll get to know called Legacy Nights. And where we'll get an opportunity to kind of reflect back on our organization's history, connect with some of the key icons that we have in our organization, and then bring that through and kind of culminate to what we're going to call a club milestone party that you're all going to be part of, even the Gulls fans here that are willing to make that drive. We haven't forgot about it. We want them to be a part of all of that because let's be honest. If we look at the Gibsons and we look at the Terrys, we know where they started. They started down in San Diego, and we got them here. So it's great to as we see this entire group here as one big family. So Based on your feedback, and we receive a fair amount of it, I think you've seen in the literature that's in front of you on Orange Alliance fans that food and beverage was a main consideration. So we have doubled next year your food and beverage discount from 10 to 20%. And then I don't know who are my beer drinkers out there, because everybody wanted beer included in that, so beer will be included in that as well. We're going to have select items on the merch side too. So I know you got your discount already, but some of those select merch items are going to come on 30% as well. So our San Diego folks, that feedback, you've asked for a deeper integration with the NHL franchise, so I think we're putting the finishing touches on a preseason game that'll be played right in your neighborhood with the Ducks Kings next year. So we're excited. We're excited about that. So, and then hopefully our Orange Alliance fans will come down and be part of that. So I don't want to beleaguer it. I do have some things that I'll come back up here and close with, including what we're looking at Fan Appreciation Day and our very last game of the season against those LA Kings, and we're going to have a couple I'm with you. We're gonna put together a plan on that very last game to make sure that place is all orange and have a great time with that. So, okay. So, without further ado, let me give it back to JoJo, because he's much better at introducing anybody than I ever will be. But thank you again. So bundle up a little bit and let's talk a little bit of hockey. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
How about another big round of applause? Keep that round of applause going for Aaron Teets, ladies and gentlemen. And you know what? We are here in the beautiful Hangar 244 in the city of Irvine, so I gotta go with the theme here. So keep that round of applause going. Make some noise. Introducing to the stage the television analyst Brian Hayward, General Manager Pat Verbeek, and Special Advisor to Hockey Operations Scott Niedermayer.
Welcome, everybody, and thanks so much for being here. A special thank you to our Orange Alliance members. As Aaron just mentioned, we certainly appreciate your loyalty this season. I know there's a lot of folks here that invest not only with their wallets, their pocketbooks, their bank accounts, but also they are emotionally invested in this team. And I can't thank you enough. It's been a difficult season in terms of wins and losses, but in my humble opinion, finally what we're seeing now is an organization that at times in the past seemed content just to get into the playoffs and be in the middle of the pack, to one that has now got its eyes fixed firmly on winning a championship one again. And that's really what we're all here for and where we want to get to, right? I got two gentlemen who's going to be answering my questions here today, and a pleasure to introduce them. On my far right, I think you probably see his jersey hanging in the rafters, the former captain of the Anaheim Ducks, member of the exclusive Triple Gold Club, Olympic champion, multiple Stanley Cup champion, World Junior champion, Scott Niedermayer. Doesn't really need an introduction. And our new general manager, Pat Verbeek, he's been around for a while now, a 20-year playing career. He also won a Stanley Cup while a member of the Dallas Stars. After retiring, he made the incorrect decision to dabble in broadcasting for a little while. Then he made a much better decision to transition into the Hockey Operations Department, where he helped build a champion down in Tampa, and where he also helped set the Detroit Red Wings on a path where they are back now to respectability, on the cusp of making the playoffs once again. He's going to do that here in the not-too-distant future. Pat Verbeek, thanks for joining us. So I'm going to start with Pat, and I want to get to the trade deadline, because it just happened, and it was a long day yesterday, and I have to say that by the end of the day, I know you did so many interviews that you were running out of gas, because I know you're up at 4 a.m. with your crew preparing for the trade deadline. But first question, 3 deals yesterday. What was your goal with the deadline, and can you give us a rundown on the assets that were acquired?
So I think anytime you go into the trade deadline, you have UFAs, you're always trying to gain. I'm always looking to improve the team, and so there's a couple ways you can do it. You can look to improve it through draft picks, which helps our future, builds our stockpile of draft capital, but also improve the team at the same time. So in the Kulikov deal, I found I had a chance to get a third-round pick. I looked at that as a really good get because at the end of the day, we got Kulikov for future considerations when I traded for him this summer. And then I was also able to add Brock McGinn, who I've always liked as a player. He played in Carolina. He was in Pittsburgh this past season, and he brings a grit and a competitiveness and an energy that I want to have 20 players to have. So it's so that's kind of what those are the types of players that I'm whether they're skilled, they're highly skilled. I want all of our players to kind of bring that element every night to the rink. And so it was an opportunity for me to get him. And so we made the investment. He has 2 more years on his contract right now, and I think we got good value there. With John Klingberg, unfortunately for him and for us, he didn't play to his capabilities. And when I sat down and I talked with him, he didn't expect it to be as tough to adjust to a new team and new teammates. And I think at the start of the season, he really pushed and he tried to do more than he should have tried to do. And I think for me, and being in any player, when you're trying to have the best year possible and you start pushing too hard and you start trying too hard, things don't work out. And so with that instance, he ended up having a real tough season. And I think being able to move him became more difficult because teams viewed him as having a tough season, and it kind of scared some teams. So, in that aspect, I was able to get a kid. We got a 4th-round draft pick in 2025, and Andre Schuster, who had played here last year, we ended up having 6 defensemen, so I needed to add another defenseman that could carry us through the year. And then Nestorenko, this kid, I think I'm really excited about the kid. He's 6'2". He skates well and has high skill. And the one thing he's really improved on, I've been watching him for 3 years in college, so I know the player and feel comfortable with the player coming into our organization. I think the big thing for him is he made a big jump in his competitiveness. Being the type of player, getting to the net and competing hard in front of the net is where he really changed his game and what made him more successful and be able to produce a lot more this year than he had in the prior 2 years. So I was excited to get him. And so that deal, I'm trying to think, what's the other deal I made?
You swapped minor league defensemen. You brought in Chase Prisky for Austin Strand.
That I didn't do that. Rob DeMaio did that.
Oh,
but
Rob
anyway,
DeMaio did that.
So we ended up just switching defensemen with Strand. Prisky brings a more offensive side of to the game than Strand did. So we wanted to kind of give ourselves the ability in San Diego. It's been a tough stretch for us scoring goals there, and so a lot of when trying to produce goals, it helps when you can produce goals from the back end. So that was the reason we made that deal.
The other trade or the other deal that happened involved Henry Thrun, who was a college draft, a 4th-round pick, and he notified the Ducks that his intention was not to sign with you. And for you that aren't aware, you have to sign college players 3 years after they've been drafted by August 15th, or they become unrestricted free agents. So can you fill us in a little bit on the background of what happened with Henry and what you were able to accomplish by flipping him?
Yeah, so Henry Thrun informed me about 3 weeks prior to the deadline that he wasn't going to sign with us, and so I had to go to work with the agent. I didn't want to lose him for nothing. When you invest 4 years of player development and money into a player that we liked and we drafted, you certainly don't want to lose an asset for nothing, and so I worked out a deal with the agent to kind of give me, 5 teams to talk to, and in the end, Henry ended up picking San Jose, and so we made the deal with San Jose to get a third-round pick for him.
Got the feeling that Henry probably looked at the depth chart too and saw the number of young defensive prospects that we have coming up. And Scotty, I'm going to get to you in a minute to talk about some of those kids. But, you know, in talking about what our fans here today can look forward to in the upcoming years, when you look at the young core of this team and some of those prospects, maybe you can talk a little bit about what the future is going to look like in your mind.
Well, next year, for just on defense alone, we have Olin Zellweger, we have Mentukov, we have Hines, and I'm not sure where Jackson Lacombe's going to end up yet, but he's going to start with Anaheim when his college seasons is over this year, so we'll see where he ends up. But there's 4 highly respected prospects there, and I'm excited for, I mean, San Diego next year is probably going to see, you know, a lot of what's going to be playing for the Ducks hopefully in a couple of years. So it's really exciting for me and for our both organizations that the types of players that are going to be coming in.
Just a little bit about those players. Minchikov, I mean, we have 3 players right now, 3 defensemen, which I don't know if I've ever heard of this, that lead the respective on Canadian junior leagues in scoring. Zellweger leads the Western League in goal scoring. Minchikov leads the Ontario League in scoring, and Luno leads the Quebec League in scoring. So, you know, one organization has the 3 kids. And so, Scotty, I'll go to you now. I know you've seen these 3 players. I'd love to hear your impressions of them.
Yeah, it's kind of part of my job that everybody asks me, what exactly do you do? But that is part of it, is to get out, watch these guys play, spend a bit of time with them, pass along some advice that I was fortunate enough to get when I was their age and through my career. So just kind of trying to help them on their journey to get to the NHL, get to pro hockey, and it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed watching these guys develop and have their successes, and hopefully that will continue. Zellweger's nearby, living in British Columbia now, so I'm able to get to see him. He got traded actually to the team I grew up playing in Kamloops. They host the Memorial Cup, so it's a great opportunity for him to play real meaningful hockey and see, you know, what he can do in that type of pressure and situation. So once he's got to Kamloops, he's been great. I mean, he's really been, you know, his energy's jumped up, and he's a kid that you almost have to slow down the way he plays. He wants to do something every time he's on the ice. And when you get to the highest level of hockey, sometimes that can be a challenge, and you have to figure out when and where you do that. But you love to see it. Pat talked about the competitiveness and what he wants in players, and he has it. He has that. Seen Mintukov as well play a few times. He was traded. He's now with Ottawa, who's one of the top teams in the Ontario League. So he's going to have a similar opportunity to have a good long playoff run and see what that's all about. It's very different. You know, I'm sure even for you fans, when you come to the rink to the playoffs, you bring a little extra. There's a little more emotion, a little more energy when you come to the rink, and we feel it as players, and it's a fun time of year, but there's added pressure and expectation, so it's good for these guys to get that opportunity. And I also have seen Jackson Lacombe. He played against my son here when they were 13 years old. I've seen him play this year, so I kind of know him a little bit from the years, and he's another great skater, extremely smart player, so it's fun. They have a long way to go. When I was that age, I thought I knew it all, but I sit here and can tell myself I sure didn't now that I ended up playing my whole career and understanding there was a lot to learn. So that's our job, is to try and help them get to that point, and it's exciting to have that type of talent coming for sure.
Thanks, Scotty. Pat, a few comments about the young core of this team, because you've been on the record this season saying that this year is more about development than it is wins and losses because of the stage that this team is at. So how do you think McTavish, Zegras, Terry, I know it's been a tough year for Jamie Drysdale with his injury, but you know, when you evaluate them, how do you think they're doing in terms of their development?
Well, I think, I mean, I include Troy Terry in that as well, right? Did you mention him? You forgot him.
Yeah, we'll throw him in there too,
right.
yeah.
Okay, we'll throw him. He's still young. I still consider 25 young. So, yeah, I mean, Troy's been, his goal scoring hasn't been quite as high, but I think there's been a lot of other elements that have improved. His strength has improved. I still see a lot more upside with Troy Terry. I think he's just really it's funny. Every player goes through different stages and how they get to the level that they need to get to. And I think Troy is just actually really starting to figure out, the off-ice conditioning, the strength that he needs, to play against the bigger defensemen, playing against the best defensemen each and every night, understanding the mental approach that you need to take playing against the best players in the league every night. And that in itself is a learning experience, and you need to go through that each and every night. And I think that he's learning how to do that, and a couple of years from now, he should be able to push all the compete against the best players and make it hard for them on a nightly basis to where they have to worry about him as much as he has to worry about playing against the defenseman. So, and then Trevor Zegras, and he's obviously doing well offensively. He's made strides in his game defensively. So for me, he still has a lot to work on from a defensive standpoint. I would say he needs to get stronger as well. He's going to be facing the 6'4", 6'5" defenseman on a nightly basis. That's not an easy thing to do over an 82-game schedule. And so, being physically strong to be able to handle that on a nightly basis is tough. And so that to me is where Trevor needs to keep improving on. Mason McTavish has had a really nice rookie year. He started on the fourth line and has worked his way now up into the second line. So he's progressed very nicely there. I think his defensive game has taken big strides. He's a smart kid. He's a smart hockey player, and now it's just gaining more experience for him. And he's only 19, so he's getting, he's going to get better in the next couple of years. He'll take big steps. Jamie Drysdale, unfortunately, was hurt early in the season. He's probably in the fourth month of through his rehab on a shoulder surgery. So we'll see here in the next 3-4 weeks to see if he even returns or has consideration to return. But at the worst, he'll be ready for next year.
So when we talk about these young players and we use this term rebuild, we had a previous general manager from way back in my early days here who said a rebuild was 5 to 6 years. Where are we in the rebuild?
Well, I think we're at least a couple years into it. I mean, we have players that, Zegras and McTavish, and, you look at Troy Terry and you look at Drysdale, they're a couple years under their belt. It's certainly the hardest thing, when you're going through this process is to remain patient. And the hardest thing with young players is not pushing them too fast into this league. And so I'm going to continue to remain patient with the younger players until they're absolutely ready. When I look at, like Mason's really strong kid, so he's able to handle the physical part of it. A lot of times the reason these younger players can't make it to the NHL, it's not because they don't have the talent, it's because they're not strong enough. They're playing against, the players that weigh 220 pounds now, and some of them are only 185 pounds coming into this, so it becomes difficult. They're giving all that weight and strength up, and the last thing that I want to do, and I've seen it in other organizations, is these players get hurt. They get nicked up. They get, the odd concussion. And it's all because they're not physically ready to play in the NHL. Ability-wise, they're able to play, but a lot of times it's from strength. So that's why I constantly harp on these kids. Guys, in the gym. You can't spend enough time in the gym. And so until they actually start to go against these players and understand on a nightly basis, 82 nights, it takes a toll on them. So I don't want them to have to be exposed to that, and when they're ready, they're ready.
Scotty, when you started your career, you're a young player and entering the league with New Jersey, and that was a rebuilding team. So you actually went through this process as a player. You had some veterans around you, but you were a young team that took a few years to really get going. Can you reflect on that experience a little bit?
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot to learn about this game, whether it's how to take care of your body and get stronger and what works for you to sort of be and have success over 82 games like Pat was talking about, or the decision making that you do when you're on the ice in the middle of a shift. That takes time. I was fortunate. I had some veterans that I was able to play alongside, and I really wasn't thrust in sort of like Pat was talking about. I wasn't sort of depended on or expected to do more than I could. I was able to just work on my game, focus on what I had to, and it really made it a more comfortable transition from playing junior hockey to the NHL. So I agree with Pat. It's extremely important that these guys can have some success as they're finding their way. It's a cruel game sometimes out there, and when things start going bad, your confidence can kind of get soft, and that's a tough way to play. So these young guys have to be able to, in a situation where they can be challenged, take some hard knocks, but also have some success as they're finding their way and learning their game. So it does take time, and if we're aware of that and we allow it, it should pay off where they have great long careers and a lot of success ahead of them.
Pat, we've talked about the future in terms of the prospects that we have and the young core, but I'm interested to get your overall assessment of this season with the team. Your first year really running the club.
Well, I think overall I would have, if the way the team penciled on paper, I probably would have said I would expected the team to have done better than what our record is. I think early on with the team, I thought that, and this is, you're going to hear me say this a lot, the compete level wasn't at a standard, where of what I expected or any of our teams I expect. I want us to be really hard to play against, and we were too easily pushed aside. We weren't competing hard enough to win pucks, and so I think that kind of contributed early on to the record, and I think as the seasons progressed, we've certainly gotten a lot better in that perspective, and so it's just there's a lot of things that different players and different teams have to go through, and that was the competitive side they had to learn to compete harder.
One of the questions, and a lot of these questions, by the way, came from members of our Orange Alliance. One of the questions that a lot of people want to hear about is John Gibson. John Gibson at times has been an elite player. I think he has 4 years left on his contract here in Anaheim. Some people were wondering, were you considering moving John Gibson at the deadline?
No, I'm not considering moving John Gibson. I've actually sat down and had a conversation with John Gibson about this, and we have an excellent number one goaltender. The hardest thing in the NHL is finding a number one goaltender, and I speak from experience because when we were in Tampa, we did not have a number one goaltender, and we gave up numerous assets trying to chase to get one. And finally, we were able to draft one with Andrei Vasilevsky. And so when you have one, you don't give them up unless you got another one that's coming behind. And at this point, we're very young with our goaltenders, and certainly we're not at that stage to where anyone can take John Gibson's position at number one right now.
I noticed you didn't look me in the eyes when you said number one goaltender. You didn't say that, right? I want to talk a little bit as well about the coaching staff. You said at the beginning of the year that this was going to be a year where you would evaluate at the end of the season all the members of your coaching staff. Where does that sit right now, and what does that evaluation process entail?
Well, there's lots of things that go into that process, but I'm still going through. I want to give the full 82 games and probably take another week or two to kind of decide, how it, and just kind of work through the process of, the evaluation when I look at everybody. So I'm still going through that process, and that's kind of where we're at until, the season's finished.
Okay, let's look forward to the draft. I mean, we've heard a lot about this draft. We hear about certainly a lot about the top three names that Central Scouting has kind of identified as players that are potential franchise players down the road. What are your impressions of this amateur draft?
Well, I think that It's hard to predict any draft. You just, there's players that could be rated at 20, turn out to be some of the best players in that draft class. You just never know when you're dealing with 17-year-olds how they're going to turn out. Some of them mature at different stages physically. Some of them are mature, at 17, 18, and they're not going to get much better. So the hardest part is being able to predict that. And I would say, the 3 players that you talked about, and there's probably a couple more after those 2 guys that, I would be extremely excited to get. So it's certainly one of those players would really help the depth of skill and, adding a top 6 forward.
By the way, the NHL has not announced yet the set-in-stone date for the draft lottery. It's usually the first weekend on the opening round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So it's a date that we're all, really looking forward to. And Scotty, when you look at these young defensemen that you are helping to develop, what's the most important thing that you're looking for? Is it skating? Is it vision? There's got to be things that separate certain players at that age from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, I agree with Pat, and I think it was something I kind of had to learn was just the level of compete and intensity that you had to have success in this league. It's obviously the best league in the world. It's not easy. Some nights it does go your way and it feels a little easy, but it's not. And for me, that was something I really had to learn. And when you can see that little spark in players, it might just be one little thing that you see a player just get in on a puck harder than the other guy and win that, or just you can see it. You can kind of see that it matters to them, that they want to win that battle, win that shift. And I think that goes a long way in having success at the highest level. Obviously, a smart player hockey-wise is extremely important. When you can put those guys into your lineup and there's a bunch of them together, that's kind of when you can have a lot of success. So to me, those are the 2 things. Obviously, skating these days, the skill, all these players have that for the most part. So I would say those 2 things they stand out to me.
Final question, and this is for both of you guys, is people are kind of wondering about the relationship between you 2. Scott, you're an advisor, an advisory role. How often do you talk? How often do you communicate? And if you can offer any insights into what some of those conversations are like without getting into all the gory details.
Well, I call Scott my voice of reason in a troubled time. So everyone, I'll pick up the phone and, actually
I don't always do a good job of that, though.
No, you don't.
You're better at that than me.
Sometimes I have to be the voice of reason in a troubled time. But no, we take turns. I respect the career of Scott Niedermayer. Obviously the championships. He has a lot of experience from that aspect. He's gone through a lot of things. We have a really young defense corps. I ask him to go, like as he said, go mentor them, go watch them. I also ask him to go watch games when we're looking at. I don't profess to know every little nuance, of what the best defenseman could be. So I ask him to go do that. And so I want, I see what my eye sees, but I want his opinion too. So that's kind of how this relationship kind of developed, and how he's been instrumental, for me, advising on defensemen, and different types of defensemen throughout, whether it's in junior, whether it's minor, the minors or the NHL. So there's certain things when we talk about coverages, decisions to be made, puck decisions, positioning decisions. Those are the things that I talk to him about all the time.
Scotty?
And as little as I teach Pat, I'm learning a heck of a lot more about how difficult this is, from scouting to managing the 50 players you have under contract and the situations. I often think, when I was playing, I was really just worried about sort of myself. Like, am I playing well? Am I, and then you get into management and you've got a bunch of players doing the same thing, and you've got to figure that out. You've got to put the puzzle together, and you have to sort of see big pictures. And it's a very challenging, job to be able to do and do well. And, I've enjoyed that. I've enjoyed learning. I've enjoyed listening to Pat, right from the get-go and what he's been through and what he believes. I think what made it easy is that the things he spoke of that were important to him, I'm just like, yeah, I agree. I think there are some things that we challenge each other on. I know he challenges me on some things, and I have to think about it and maybe come back to him. But I think sort of the gist of what it takes to have success, to me, is there's really only one way. And you have to do it with a high compete level, you have to do it smart, and you have to do it as a team. And I think those are things that we do agree on.
And last question, and I know I said that before, but this is the absolute last question for you, Pat.
You're always tricking us. You're always tricking us.
Yeah. and I think this is a really important one for especially these people sitting in this room, and it's the budget. I mean, we were $10 million, I believe, under the cap this year in terms of what was spent. What is the budget that we have, and what are you allowed to spend?
Wow.
I don't know. I don't know, Hazy.
I'm right? That's
Well, okay. The budget, so when I interviewed with Henry Senioli and Susan and Jillian, I told them I was going to spend the money like it was my money, okay? And I think they like that. But the second question was, and when the interview was almost over and Henry asked me, do you have any questions for me? And I said, yes, only one. And he goes, what's that? And I said, well, when the time comes and when the time is right, where I feel it's right, can we spend to the cap? And he said, absolutely yes. So that's kind of how we're going to kind of proceed through this process. And when it comes time, when I feel we're knocking on the door and we're in the right spot, both from a talent level and from an age level and an experience level, we're going to do what we need to do to win.
okay. I've been asked to ask two more questions. Next question has to do with the draft and positioning in the draft. And there was a time when we were in last place. I think we're fourth from the bottom right now. Do you influence Dallas Aikens? I don't want to say that we're trying to.
That's a secret, Hazy.
Yeah. No, but those conversations,
no,
they happen out here. These conversations happen
I would
here.
never. Like, that's the integrity. For me, the integrity of sport is winning. We're here to win, and so are the players. And the players, it's their careers, and they're fighting for jobs, and I don't want to take that away, their ability to do that. And so, no, they're out there, they're doing their best, and I won't do that to the coaching staff either. That it's their jobs too that are on the obviously on the line, and so they're trying to do the best they can. I would never do that.
Okay, this was not my question. This question that I was asked to ask, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. When it comes down to this summer, you have a lot of Zegras is up. Terry is up. You have some guys that are having real good years. When does that process start, or has it started already, if you can share?
No, it hasn't started yet, and the reason why I wanted to let the players not have to deal with that. I wanted to let them get through their season, and then once the season's over, then we'll start picking up the phone and having conversations about getting contracts finished. But that's kind of how I didn't want to burden or bother any of the players with that sort of stuff during the season.
And Scotty, a final one for you. When you go out and you look at these young players, can you talk to us a little bit about the time that, are you allowed to spend time with, as much time as you want with them? Are you allowed to visit with them away from the rink? Can you take them to lunch or dinner or anything like that? Are there rules or restrictions on the mentoring process that you're going through?
I don't know. That's a good question.
So that's
no, but I absolutely spend time with them, and the modern day player is used to that. They've had different clinics and they go to skills camps and they have different coaches and they really are receptive to it. I look at it, and think, wow, that's a lot that they're taking in, but they love it, they want it. So absolutely, they want to hear what you think, they want to hear advice, and then, it does take time. You don't just kind of pick it up and do what someone recommends, but, if you can just plant those seeds and keep consistent with them, hopefully they head in that direction. So I really enjoy it. They're great kids. They want to get better. And like I said, it's fun seeing them improve and get better with the help of everybody involved. So I really do enjoy it.
Thank you. And I'm not allowed to ask any more questions, I've been told. But again, I want to thank everybody for being here. The show is not over yet. JoJo is going to take over
Brian,
in a moment.
I'll get the last word here, all right?
Okay.
I want to thank each and every one of you here, okay? It means a lot, not only to the organization, but it means a tremendous lot to the players. I know you guys spend a lot of time and your money to the players, but it's a special feeling, and I can, Scott and I can both, speak from experience, and so can Brian. But when you go on the ice and you hear you guys, your loud voices, you're cheering, there's no better feeling from a player standpoint after, we do something well on the ice, you score, you make a big hit. There's no better feeling. And so not having you guys there would be very disappointing to the players. I mean, what you provide, the energy is very important. And I just kind of want to let you know, from our side, and from the players' point, that it's gratifying, it's satisfying to the players there, and we thank you for all of that.
Amen. Thanks, guys.